Hi everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of my explanation of the instructional plans. Okay, when we left we were talking about standards and we're going to talk about the rest of the aspects of instructional plans, and then I'm going to look at instructional plan A in particular. Okay, the whole lesson is based on the standards. Standards are things that learners are supposed to learn at a particular grade level or in a particular context. Some places especially when you're teaching EFL, not every place is going to have standards. Standards-based education is something that's very popular in the United States, but really that's fairly recent for us to be doing that. So around the world, you're not always going to be finding standards per se. You might be finding a curriculum that states what learners are supposed to learn in a particular year. So for example, there might be a national curriculum where there's textbooks related to it and there's specific things learners are supposed to learn in a particular year. In Thailand, that's how it operated when I taught ESL there, or EFL there, in the schools. The schools had developed a national curriculum and textbooks that went with it, and then teachers were supposed to follow that curriculum, and instead of doing standards they had a specific curriculum. Standards-based education is kind of broader. It's not the curriculum per se, it's what the curriculum would be based upon or what the curriculum would be aiming at. So it's just another step in sort of regulating what people should know. But standards give local districts or teachers a little bit of freedom in how they meet the standards. So it doesn't set the curriculum, it just sets the general things that should be covered, but not how they're covered. Okay, so if you are operating in a place that doesn't have standards that dictate the curriculum, then you may just have a curriculum, or you may in the future end up being someone who develops the curriculum or helps to design the curriculum. So anyway, these standards are guidelines for teachers or for curriculum developers to develop their lessons. And if you're teaching in a context that doesn't use standards, then what you'll want to look at is the curriculum or the curricular goals for the level that you're going to teach at. Okay, we looked at ELD and California Common Core standards. I'd like to just show you also the CASAS Basic Skill Content Standards. These are standards for adult education in California. Okay, so here on this website, which I have linked on our Blackboard site over here, on this website you're going to find various standards. This is under our instructional plans. This is the assignment page and then the instructional plan folder. So here you find various standards, including the CASAS Adult Education Standards. And if you're teaching adult education, you could just look through some of the language-related standards and pick an area there at the appropriate level that fits for you. Okay. So, you've looked through various standards and or curricular goals, and you've chosen an area that fits for you. Now what you need to do is say, okay, this is the goal or the standard that I'm aiming at. Now I need, for my lesson, I need to develop really more specific objectives. So goals are broader and objectives are very specific about the thing you're going to do in your 1-hour lesson. The content objective is pretty much the topic of the lesson. The language objective is some kind of language skill, reading, speaking, listening, writing, think of something within those language skills that you can specifically teach. It could be language like grammar or something along those lines, but it could also be more of a skill like making polite requests or um, writing a persuasive paragraph or something along those lines, listening to a lecture and taking notes, things like that. That's a language objective. And you can again look at the ELD standards to see if there's some ideas in there for specific language areas you could focus on. Then the learning strategy objective is really how you're going to scaffold their learning or how you're going to help them become better learners, more autonomous learners. So the learning strategy objective is really the more cognitive part of the lesson. So for example, you could incorporate a graphic organizer. Let's say the content objective is persuasive essays. The language objective might be writing a persuasive topic sentence using specific kinds of stance markers. And a learning strategy objective might be something that helps your learners to figure out what their thesis statement actually is, like some kind of pro and con graphic organizer or something along those lines. So all three should be interconnected. It's like a lesson that's about one thing, and that's the content. The language objective is the language they would need to do that one thing. That's the topic of the lesson. And the learning strategy objective is like how you scaffold them or how they can learn that thing. Okay, now task chains are like the activities that you do in the lesson to teach them those things. Once you have the objectives, you need to figure out how you're going to teach it. Imagine that when you're writing the task chain, this is like instructions for the teacher. Okay? Imagine if you were like either having a substitute come to your class and you want to explain to them exactly what you want them to do. Or another use of detailed lesson plans, like the one we're asking you to do, would be when you provide the lesson plan to your supervisor. They want to know what you're doing in the classroom. And so you might describe, here's what I did in my lesson in great detail. That's the task chain. Okay, you're going to have 3 task chains, one for each performance objective. Or if you see it a little differently and they're all interconnected, the task chains basically need to teach your students what you said you were going to teach them in your objectives. Assessments are very important. So you have your objectives and then your task chains, and then you need to have assessments. The assessments are the things where you evaluate whether or not you met your objectives. You should be able to like draw a line from your objectives and say there's this objective, here's what I do in the activities to meet the objective, and then here's the assessment that tells me specifically that the students learned this specific thing in this lesson. Okay, assessments can be formative or summative. A formative assessment is more like along the way, like figuring out whether people get it or not, giving them a chance to get feedback and then revise what they're doing or allow you to change the lesson to make sure that they understood. Summative is at the end. It's like, okay, I did all my teaching and we've done all the activities and everything. I'm not going to adapt anymore or change anymore. At the end, did they learn this thing or not? That's summative assessment. Okay, assess what the students learned from the task chains, which are based off of the objectives. So, when you have an assessment, you have a rubric. There must be some kind of statement of the scale you're going to use or the grades you're going to use, and the criteria. So a rubric is going to include criteria and some kind of scale, whether it's a letter grade or a point value, whatever it is, or even just a description, good, excellent, that kind of thing. The focus sheets that you include with your final version of this are going to be the way that you explain or introduce the material. Like this, an example here is this PowerPoint. This PowerPoint is like the focus sheet. I'm explaining and I have information about what I'm trying to teach you guys right now. That's the focus sheet. Whereas worksheets or graphic organizers, or worksheets are anything they're going to work on. It could be like an exercise, or it could be graphic organizers, or it could be whatever it is, the worksheets that scaffold their learning in your class. Okay, let's turn to Lesson Plan A in particular. Instructional Plan A is focused on the use of a learning strategy. The instructional plan will be centered on the cognitive approach to teaching. Direct teaching of a learning strategy should be the main focus of the lesson. Okay, now, you're still going to have content and language objectives, but in your lesson, you can't just tell the students to use a strategy. You're teaching a learning strategy for this one. It's teaching students how to learn. So you're teaching them some new strategy and specifically assessing whether or not they learned that strategy well. A lot of times you can just have the learning strategy objective be like more like that they use this strategy or something along those lines, but really learning strategies are the main thing you're focusing on in this lesson. So the cognitive approach includes teaching students how to learn, how to analyze their strengths and weaknesses, and to plan and evaluate their own learning. Learning strategies include methods that learners employ to improve their reading, writing, speaking, or listening. The content may be part of a larger unit or maybe standalone lesson. Make sure you have well-established language learning objectives, activities, and assessments. And use the lesson plan format provided. Now, I'm going to remind you guys, back here, when we go to the objectives, remember, if you look in STEL, Chapter 5, pages 119 to 123, there's a whole bunch of ideas for learning strategies there. And our PowerPoint and lectures for Module 5 also have lots of ideas in there. So that's the focus of this first instructional plan. Now keep in mind that right now what you're turning in right at first is just the instructional plan template. So go back to this template that you have on our Blackboard site and just respond to each of these questions briefly. Do try to identify clear objectives because that will really help me figure out, do these task chains seem to fit with that? Do they seem to be appropriate assessments? I need to provide you great feedback on this so that you can get it right when you write up the whole thing later. Okay, you guys, I'm almost out of time. So that is it for our explanation of the instructional plan. Each of the subsequent instructional plans will have new instructions. They're slightly different in focus, but lesson plan A is really in that cognitive learning strategy type approach. So good luck. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will hopefully hear from you guys soon. Take care. Bye.